state by state, a little bit at a time. Usually starts with medical marijuana, moves to recreational marijuana, and then we have seen now Oregon that in essence has decriminalized everything. So in fact, I've seen a meme that's kind of funny. It shows heroin, cocaine, it shows these substances, and then it has a plastic straw. It says, which of these is illegal in Oregon? And it's a plastic straw. So things have got a little wacky. Washington is currently looking at decriminalizing. There's another state as well. So the question becomes, well, do we be like all the other states? Do we just kind of sit back and wait and see what happens? And I can tell you what will happen if we do nothing. Idaho will become like all the other states where we just get a wave will roll over us of out-of-state special interest money that will lead to legalization because this is a big money issue. And that's one reason we get so much opposition on this from the outside folks, from the drug culture. So let me just kind of go to the bill itself, if I may. We had a bill, as you know, in the Senate, which we were able to pass with 2/3 vote, which is required, as you know. This is a constitutional amendment. So we got the 2/3 vote there. And then it came over your direction, and as I conferred with leadership and Chairman Cray and others, we decided maybe that was a bridge too far for some folks. It had FDA language in it. It had a bunch of code citations, et cetera. So we went to a very simple approach, and that's what you have before you. And so we'll look at the guts of it in a minute. But I want to give you a little introduction, as it says here. If you look on line 11, at the beginning, this is where the legislature finds, well, why do we need a constitutional amendment? And so we go through some reasons here. Number one, we all took an oath to sustain the Constitution. And this is what Article 24, Section 24, Article 3 of the Constitution of the state currently says. That is the line 11 now. The first 12, the first concern of all good government is the virtue and sobriety of the people and the purity of the home. Then we talk about other states and what's happened. I've kind of given you a little summary there. This bill is about the protection of kids and families and communities, our schools, our businesses. And then we go on to say on line 21, the Constitution further states that the legislature should further all wise and well-directed efforts for the promotion of temperance and morality. That's what this constitutional amendment does. So as we go down to line 28, we looked at where's the appropriate place to put this. And the decision was made, well, we've got alcohol. Let's put it in that particular section because this is a drug. You got addiction with alcohol, you got addiction with drugs. So we put it there. So you'll see on line 29, it says, so liquor and controlled substances. Now, we didn't mess with anything in the liquor statute there. We left that alone. And if you go to line 34, we've added drugs in with the liquor section. A controlled substance or any mixture thereof can be removed from Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 of the Idaho Uniform Controlled Substances Act. Why do we cite those code or those sections there? It's not a code section, but why do we say Schedule 1 and Schedule 2? There are 5 schedules of controlled substances. Now, each year, in fact, just a week or two ago, we in the Senate and you in the House approved Epidiolex and removed that from the schedule. So anything that comes down from the Board of Pharmacy, we as a legislature make the final decision. We're going to approve this or not. And so we, rather than focus on all of the controlled substances, we picked Schedule 1 and 2, which are the most addictive and have limited medical applicability. If we had left all those schedules in there, we'd be looking at cough medicines having to be approved by the legislature. So we didn't want to go there because they do have some of these drugs in the higher schedules that are in them. So it goes on to say, as it existed July 1, 2021. Why 2021? Because we have a hemp bill that's working its way through the House. And we've worked with the hemp people. In fact, we've had complementary language put together so that they're not in conflict with one another. And there seemed to be a large group of folks that wanted to make sure that the hemp legislation passed. So we carved out that exception. So this session, the legislature can pass a hemp bill. And that's why that was a carve out. So it goes on to talk about manufacture, production, all those kinds of things are prohibited. And they can only, and then line 39, they can only be removed. Such removal or lawfulness is approved by 2/3 of all the members of each of the two houses voting separately. Why 2/3? First, let me say this. For the typical approvals we do each year from the Board of Pharmacy, when we add drugs to the schedule, that will remain a simple majority. That's not affected at all. But if we're going to remove heroin or cocaine or LSD or those kinds of drugs, if we're going to remove those from the schedules and make them lawful, then that will require a 2/3 vote of the legislature. And then there's a little phrase there at the end, line 41, that says, the vote not being subject to the majority vote provisions of section 15 of this article. And currently it says that a majority of folks will pass a bill, the legislature. Just to be safe, a majority, somebody said, well, maybe 2/3 isn't a majority. Well, if it isn't, we've sure passed a lot of bills in these legislatures sessions that are 2/3 or even unanimous. And if a majority really was an issue, then all those bills would be unconstitutional. So 2/3 is not an unconstitutional lift, but we put that little caveat in there just in case anybody had a problem with anything. And then the next line on the second page, line 3, we just clarify that doesn't change any of the existing stuff that's going on right now, the statutes, et cetera. And that was, again, added by attorneys just to be on the safe side. So then what's the question that would go to the public? And then that's line 10. And it's a one-liner saying, shall section, and we're required, anytime you are adding to the Constitution, you have to say what article and what section. So we're required to say, shall section 26, article 3 of the Constitution of the State of Idaho be amended to prohibit the legalization of unlawful drugs unless approved by 2/3 of the Idaho legislature. So that's essentially your bill. So I'm happy to take any questions on that, or I could go on and try to sell you some more on why this is such a wonderful thing. But I'll leave it to you, Chairman. You dictate what you'd like to have happen.
Thank you, Senator Groh. Are there questions for Senator Groh? Representative Gannon.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Senator Groh. So where are opioids where do opioids land in your bill?
Senator Groh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is not directed at opioids. That's a separate issue that is being dealt with by the Board of Pharmacy.
Follow-up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Groh, you indicated that you were concerned about Idaho following in the steps of neighboring states. What would be wrong with Idaho following the steps of Utah?
Senator Groh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that question. Let's talk about why Utah is where it is. And that's a voter initiative, a medical marijuana initiative, that basically overwhelmed the legislature, and they were on defense and had to deal with it. And so they ended up negotiating something that is not a positive thing. If you talk to folks down there, one of the challenges when you legalize these drugs at all, then it opens the door to all kinds of things. And so when you have a tax, which they do, on medical marijuana, and then the black market doesn't have a tax, I've been told by folks down there that there's more going out the back door of these dispensaries untaxed than out the front door where it is taxed. It's just another slippery slope to the next step, which is recreational. In fact, I'll tell you this. Thanksgiving Point, there's a recreational drug company, if you want to call it a company, that set up shop there just waiting for the approval of recreational drugs in Utah.
Follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But Utah doesn't have recreational drugs, does it?
Mr. Chairman, not yet.
Okay. All right. And what other question, Mr. Chairman?
Follow-up?
Why is it that you don't have, that this amendment does not have confidence in the judgment of a majority of the legislature, and it's looking towards a 1/3 veto power, essentially, of what the majority might do. What is the rationale for that?
Senator Groh.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you, Representative Gannon. The rationale is in other states, you've got two ways that this gets legalized. One is voter initiatives. The second is when they can't get that because half the states in the nation don't allow voter initiatives. So when that doesn't work, then they come into the legislature, and it's called pot corruption, where they start with campaign contributions to the particular legislators, hire members of their family to work in the industry. And so it's a pressure thing, it's a money thing, and when money talks, it comes in and it can overwhelm legislatures. That's why we're looking at 2/3. We're trying to make sure that, okay, let's make sure that if that kind of pressure comes, they have an uphill fight to convince this legislature that we want to legalize recreational drugs.
Follow up?
I'll ask you a real hard one, Senator.
Thanks.
Little off topic, but why don't we have if money is the concern and money influences legislatures, then why don't we have a 2/3 majority vote for any tax exemptions that come through?
Representative Gannon, I'm going to call it out of order. We got a state that requires a hand. Fair question, and one that
I understand. But
maybe we need to bring legislation to answer that.
I made my point.
It's a great question. Representative Barbieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senator Groh. First question I have is, how does this affect whether or not the federal government does some kind of an exemption out of Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 and legalizes, let's say, marijuana?
Senator Groh.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Barbieri, Representative, thank you. Wonderful question. We've dealt with that with the Attorney General's office, multiple attorneys. I'll just kind of read you the answer I've been given. The federal government has not chosen to exclusively occupy the field of drug policy. Therefore, Idaho can choose to have stricter regulation of drugs than the federal government without violation of the Supremacy Clause. Mr. Chairman, may I give an example?
Certainly.
Alcohol. If you look at the states of Tennessee and Georgia, there is a town that literally is right on the border of those two states. Tennessee allows alcohol, Georgia does not. And so there's a restaurant bar there. If you're on the Tennessee side, you can have alcohol. If you're on the Georgia side, you can't. That's just another proof that alcohol has been treated that way and drugs have been treated that way by the federal government.
Thank you. Further questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Groh, and understanding the carve-out you have for hemp in terms of the date being set for July. So if the hemp movement is unsuccessful here this year, then it would have to comply next year with the 2/3 requirements.
Senator Groh.
Mr. Chairman, thank you again for that question. I'm one of those guys that's worked against hemp. In fact, I've voted against it in the Senate every time it comes up. And the folks that are working with me on this constitutional amendment are against hemp. But we have collaborated with the hemp folks and willing to let them have the legislation we've looked at. In fact, we have run companion legislation between hemp and this particular amendment such that they don't conflict, and we're not objecting or fighting against that, and we'll help get that one through as a concession to get the constitutional amendment.
Follow up?
Mr. Chairman, I'm
Can't
not
see
sure.
your light there. So
I'm sorry. I'm
There you
just
go.
not sure that I heard an answer. So if they're unsuccessful this year, then next year they will have to comply with the 2/3 requirement to get passed.
Senator Groh.
Mr. Chairman, if they are, well, number one, they won't be unsuccessful because we'll make it happen. I'll just say that. Number two, if for some reason, we've worked with the governor's office and the state police and all of the prosecutors, all the people involved with hemp are the same folks involved with this. And so we'll work together and make it happen. If it doesn't make it this session, which I'm confident it will, if it doesn't, then we'll work with them next session, get it done.
Senator, maybe to pick up on that line of questioning, this legislation would not go before the voters, should it pass, until November of 2022. So that would allow you the 2022 session. Also, if hemp didn't pass this year, they could still come back with hemp next year before this even went to the voters. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. It would be legal next year, but if passed then by the voters, it would become illegal, so we'd have to deal with it again.
So Senator, if this passed by the voters in November of 2022, when does it go into effect?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. It goes into effect immediately. Once it's passed, once the ballot initiative is passed, then it goes to the governor. Once he has to sign it. That's the formality. Once he signs it, it's law.
Okay. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Grove, I'm not positive I understand when you talk about uniform controlled substances as it existed on July 1st. So does that mean whatever is on the list, Schedule 1, Schedule 2, on that day, that's what we're going to stick to from now on? Or it just will that change?
Senator Grove.
Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Scott. Well, that's subject to change whatever we as the legislature choose to do. And as of right now, we've in essence determined what that is, except for the hemp bill. And so we picked the July 1 date because that's when the effective date for the next fiscal year. But no, that can be changed. Yeah.
Follow up?
Yeah, one quick follow-up. So on page 2, when the section starting on line 3, to the extent that such activity was lawful for a particular controlled substance, I'm wondering, some of these drugs are produced, even though they're illegal, they're produced. So like Ritalin or Vicodin. So does this affect the manufacturing of that in our state in any way?
Senator
If
Grove.
we would, I don't know if we make it in our state. I don't
Senator
know
Grove.
if there's any.
Mr. Chairman and Representative, thank you. Let me again emphasize, first of all, back to your question on the July 2021, we can change anything after that date. That just recognizes that what was on those schedules at that date, and we can change it with that 2/3 vote. We can add to it with a simple majority, and that's important to understand. Add it to it with a simple majority, delete with a 2/3 vote. And as far as the manufacturing, all those kinds of things, this does not change any current statutes. So whatever the current statutes say, that's the law right now. And this basically all this really does is it gives us as legislators the ability to control what we've been assigned to control, which is the legalization of drugs at a 2/3 vote.
Representative Holtzclaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just don't understand the process in which we would concur with a two-thirds vote. Would we use a concurrent resolution, or would that be a bill? And would the governor, and if it was a bill, would the governor then have to sign it?
Senator Grove.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and Representative Holtzclaw. Same process we currently have. Nothing changes the process. And as you recall, the process is the FDA makes a recommendation on a drug approval. The DEA then makes their recommendation. Then the Board of Pharmacy makes their recommendation. And that's what comes to us on something that they want to add or subtract from any of these schedules. And so it would be the same process. And we, just like we did a week or two ago with Epidiolex, comes to us as a bill. We vote on it. Same process. Nothing changes.
Representative Hanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I went over this with you just before we met, but would you just kind of explain how this fits in or supersedes ballot initiatives?
Senator Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Hanks. Yes, what happens, and again, that's why, and I'll get to my slam dunk points here at the end when I conclude, but what happens with the ballot initiatives, we've got a medical marijuana thing going right now. We have a recreational that's in process. And so the question becomes, what happens at 2022 when those two are on the ballot and this is on the ballot? A constitutional amendment trumps the other two initiatives. So if you want to have any hope of trumping medical or recreational marijuana, the constitutional amendment is the way to do it, then it's done. Otherwise, every 2 years, you're going to be fighting the medical marijuana push and the recreational marijuana push and the legalization of other drug push. This is our last chance to stop it. It's never been tried in any state in the nation. And that's why you can go to all the 49 states and look at how they've all adopted the drugs, because they get the pressure from outside money. Let me just mention Oregon. With the Oregon initiative that they had, 5 million came from George Soros. 500,000 came from another billionaire. 2 other billionaires put $250,000 each into it. So $6 million from 4 people. The total amount spent on that initiative was $6.2 million. So at maximum, only 200,000 was from Oregon voters. The other 4 billionaires are all out of state. That's the kind of money that's going to come in and push, and has pushed in every state. And that's the push that we will see here on the medical and the recreational. And the advantage we have with passing this, and why it needs to be passed now, is that it gives something positive for people to donate to. It's tough to get people in all these other states here in the West. The drug folks have outspent the local people $36 to 1. It's huge. But they've never had an opportunity in any of these other states to have something positive on the ballot at the same time, that we can work to get money. We've got a PAC put together. We've got a couple of different lobbyists, I won't mention them here, but high-profile lobbyists that will work with us to get money on a positive basis to promote this legislation, which gives us an opportunity to defeat the other 2.
Thank you, Senator Groh. Are there any questions, more questions for Senator Groh? Hearing none, the RS is properly before the committee. Representative Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would love to hear the entire argument, hear both sides of the issue, and so I would move that we introduce RS 28639.
Committee, we have a motion to introduce RS 28639. Is there discussion on that motion? Representative Gannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's 2 things going on with the RS that are of big concern. The first one is, I am wondering, a question was asked about whether this would be a concurrent resolution or not. I am wondering if in line 39 through 41, there is a problem because the governor is not mentioned. It says only if such removal or lawfulness is approved by at least 2/3 of all members of each of the houses of the legislature, voting separately and enacted into law. Maybe if I could ask a question, maybe I'm wrong on that.
Senator Groh, would you yield?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Representative Gannon.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator Groh. So, would you think is the term enacted into law, is that intended to include the governor? Would that be your intent there?
Senator Groh.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Gannon. Yeah, we've worked with the governor's attorneys on this, and that was a wording that we have a dozen attorneys worked on this thing. I won't mention them all, but several from the AG's office and others. Yeah, that was that was what they recommended we use. Enacted into law shows that the governor obviously assigned it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll withdraw that concern, but
okay.
The other and principal concern is this idea that we allow a minority to dictate what decisions will be made in regard to particularly medical marijuana under this proposal. The reasoning doesn't make a lot of sense to me because, the rationale that the money would influence legislators, I think, is inappropriate. and is not, certainly I hope that isn't ever the case. I think a majority can make a decision on these issues just like a majority makes a decision on everything else that we have, virtually everything else that comes before us. That's the way our legislature was set up. And so I have a concern about what you'd call the tyranny of the minority, where a minority blocks action. And I think we saw that in the United States Senate for some years, and then they finally dispensed with that two-thirds vote requirement on a number of issues. And so I think that's a very significant hurdle that this bill's got to overcome before it would be enacted by the voters and by this legislature. And so I won't oppose printing it, but
Okay.
it certainly leads to really a tyranny by the minority.
Certainly. It's just some concerns you have.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the motion is to introduce RS 28639. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. It will be done. Thank you, Senator.